Not every man has it. Some grow a full mat across their sternum by 19. Others stay smooth their entire lives, no matter how much testosterone is running through them. Same species, same environment, wildly different outcomes on the exact same patch of skin. That inconsistency alone should tell you something strange is going on, because most evolutionary traits don't work like that. Either a feature sticks around for everyone or it disappears for everyone. Chest hair does neither. And once you start asking why, you run straight into one of the same unresolved puzzles that explains the beard, except this time, the puzzle gets even messier. To understand why, you have to go back to the same starting point. Somewhere between 2 and 3 million years ago, our ancestors began losing body hair almost everywhere, not gradually thinning it out, but shedding it structurally, changing the actual biology of the follicle. Every other primate kept its coat. Chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, every close relative we have is still covered head to toe. Humans are the one glaring exception in the entire primate family tree, and an exception that dramatic doesn't happen without an enormous evolutionary reason behind it. The leading explanation is heat. Anthropologist Nina Jablonski has spent decades researching why humans lost their fur, and her work keeps circling back to the same core pressure. Early hominins were shifting into a completely new hunting strategy, not ambush predators lying in wait. Persistence hunters, chasing prey for hours across open, sun-scorched grassland until the animal's body simply gave out from heat exhaustion before ours did. That strategy only works if your own body can survive the heat it's generating. And thick fur is a terrible match for that job. Fur is an insulator. It's built to trap warmth against the skin, which is exactly the opposite of what you need when you're the one overheating. So the body made a trade. It swapped a fur coat for a cooling system built entirely around sweat. Humans carry somewhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, more per square inch of skin than almost any other mammal on the planet. But sweat only works as a cooling mechanism if it can actually evaporate off the skin, and a dense layer of hair blocks that process almost entirely. Lose the fur, and the sweat glands underneath suddenly do their job with full efficiency. That single trait is most likely the reason you're not covered head to toe in hair right now. That answers the disappearance. It does not answer the exception, and the exception is about to get more complicated than it did with the beard. If the entire point was maximizing heat loss, the chest should have gone completely bare, the same as the back, the shoulders, the stomach. Instead, in a huge percentage of men, hair persisted directly over one of the most heat-sensitive regions of the entire body, right above the heart and lungs, right where blood vessels sit closest to the surface. If cooling were the only force at work here, this is precisely the spot evolution should have cleared first, not left half-finished. So something else has to be happening, and the fact that it's inconsistent, rather than universal like the beard, is actually the biggest clue we have. Unlike the beard, which the vast majority of men can grow given enough testosterone and enough time, chest hair density is far more genetically variable from man to man and from population to population. In some regions of the world, it's rare to find a grown man without it. In others, it's genuinely uncommon. The difference isn't primarily testosterone levels. It comes down to androgen receptor sensitivity inside the hair follicles themselves. Two men can have nearly identical hormone panels and produce completely different results on their chest, because the follicles on that specific patch of skin either respond strongly to androgens or they don't, largely dictated by genetics passed down family lines. That's a very different mechanism than a trait evolution simply decided to keep. It looks much more like a trait caught mid-transition, not fully selected for, not fully eliminated, still being actively shaped generation by generation, which raises the real question this video is built around. If chest hair isn't being kept for the same reason the beard was kept, and it isn't being removed for the same reason the rest of the body went bare, what is it actually doing there? The first theory picks up where the beard theory left off. Signaling. Facial hair growth is driven heavily by testosterone acting on the jaw and chin, and chest hair follows a similar biological pathway, just with more variable expression. Researchers who study mate preference and secondary sexual characteristics have found the same basic pattern show up again and again when people are asked to rate photos with varying amounts of body hair. Visible chest hair tends to get associated with higher perceived age, higher perceived dominance, and higher perceived masculinity. The same cluster of traits the beard signals, just lower on the body, and slightly less consistent across cultures. In a world without mirrors, without conversation, and without any way to check someone's hormone levels, a visible marker like this gave other humans a fast, involuntary way to size someone up. Strength, maturity, reproductive readiness, all broadcast passively without a single word being spoken. But signaling alone doesn't fully explain it either, because signaling theories usually predict a trait should become more universal over time, not stay this scattered and inconsistent. So there's a second theory that fits the pattern better, and it has nothing to do with how chest hair looks. It has to do with what it's built to trap. The chest, like the armpits and the groin, is packed with apocrine glands, a completely different type of sweat gland than the ones covering most of your body. Regular eccrine sweat glands, the ones responsible for cooling you down, produce a thin, mostly odorless fluid. Apocrine glands are different. They produce a thicker secretion loaded with proteins and lipids, and when that fluid meets bacteria living on the skin, it breaks down into the compounds responsible for body odor, and more specifically, for scent signals tied to hormonal state. Hair growing directly over apocrine-dense regions doesn't just sit there. It acts like a wick, increasing surface area, and helping trap and slowly release those scent compounds into the surrounding air over a much longer window than bare skin ever could. Underarm hair is the clearest example of this in action, and the chest, sitting close to major apocrine clusters near the sternum and underarms, may be doing a quieter version of the exact same job. That reframes the entire question. This might not primarily be a visual signal at all. It might be a scent signal, something ancient humans were reading on each other constantly, long before eyesight or spoken language carried the same weight in choosing a mate or sizing up a rival. We tend to assume our ancestors experienced the world the way we do now, dominated by sight. But for a huge stretch of human evolution, smell carried an enormous amount of the same information vision does for us today, and hair positioned directly over your most active scent glands would have been doing real biological work every single day, work you'd never consciously notice was happening. There's a third layer worth adding here too, and it circles back to something closer to the beard's second theory: protection. The chest sits directly over the ribcage, the sternum, the heart and lungs, structures early humans needed to defend during physical conflict long before anyone had armor or weapons beyond their own bodies. A layer of hair isn't going to stop a spear, but in the kind of close-range grappling and striking that defined most prehistoric physical conflict between rival males, even a small amount of cushioning across a vital, exposed area isn't nothing. Pair that with the fact that several of our closest primate relatives use chest beating and chest display behavior, specifically during dominance confrontations, and you get a plausible secondary explanation. Hair there isn't just being read by potential mates. It may have been part of the same visual display used to look larger, older, and more physically imposing to rival males, the same instinct still driving chest-puffing body language in men today, just without anyone consciously thinking about where that instinct came from. So you end up with three separate explanations pulling in different directions, layered on top of a genetic system that never fully committed either way. Heat loss argued for stripping the chest bare completely. Scent signaling argued for keeping hair concentrated exactly where apocrine glands cluster. Visual dominance display argued for keeping it as a size and maturity cue. And underneath all three, a genetic lottery of androgen receptor sensitivity decided, on a man-by-man basis, which of those competing pressures actually won out on any individual body. That's a very different story than the beard story. The beard is close to universal, a trait evolution seems to have settled on for almost the entire male population. Chest hair is a trait evolution never fully settled at all, one still being argued over inside your own DNA every single generation, which is honestly a strange thing to sit with. A part of your body is still, quite literally, mid-experiment. Not a finished decision, an ongoing one. Which brings us to right now, to razors, to waxing appointments, to a multi-billion-dollar grooming industry built entirely around deciding, every few weeks, whether to keep or erase a signal your ancestors never had any say over. You didn't inherit a fixed trait passed down unchanged for millions of years. You inherited an unfinished argument, one your body has been quietly running since before humans could speak, and every time you reach for a razor, or a trimmer, or decide to leave it alone completely, you're not just making a grooming choice, you're casting a vote in a debate evolution still hasn't closed. Your ancestors never got to choose. You do it without ever realizing that's what you're actually doing.